Alright, welcome back everyone. It's David, aka Fairmere4731. You can see we're picking up with a Finland 4v4, and in this match we have a new player playing as France all the way at the bottom of the screen that we just passed. And Gunny, who's going to be playing as Austria, and Stefik as France, and myself as Poland, Lithuania. Now we're going to be facing... America is going to be older player who has a very blobby style. You can see all of his men are actually selected together. He's just, the long rifles are a little faster. We have a veteran player playing as Sweden, and Austria is going to be played by a new player, and France is another veteran player. Now, in this match, we will see how the new players are going to dictate this battle and how it kind of changes the course. Now you can see the veteran France player is picking on the veteran, or the new France player on our team with the blue flag, the opponent in the red highlight, and he's going to hit him on the flank. And you're going to see myself, I'm just going to be holding this position of the hill. Now, let's take a deeper look into this, a deeper dive, if you will. So, as we did in our last Battle Lines episode, we kind of discussed a little deeper on how the tactics of the battle went and played out. So, in this, you can see our player, the new French player. He is on the top of the screen, which is the bottom of the hill on our position. Now, you can see he's pushing out in the green highlight, and the veteran French player is just standing his ground in the woodland, and the new Austrian player, who is also at the top of the screen, highlighted in red, is going to be pushing out against Gunny playing as Austria, and you can see Gunny is just going to make a defensive stance, covering from the woodland, trying to link up with his ally, his flank, and also with Stefik's flank over here in the next grove of woodland, here kind of in the top left of the screen, kind of just down a bit. And then you can see Stefik's line. Stefik will be pushing out to meet the veteran Swedish player, who's going to be in the top middle of the screen. You can see his red highlight pushing out and down the hill, or up the screen, if you will, into the perpendicular line of woods, is where he's going to be pushing into to support the Austrian player's push. And then he's also going to be pushing out against Stefik's French. And then you can see up here in the middle of the screen, my Poland-Lithuania force is going to be holding, of course, on the hill here versus the American player, who you can see his whole army is blobbed together as one massive unit. So let's go ahead and roll it forward. Okay, so as we discussed, you can see my position holding, and you can see he's already trying to open fire with his long rifles, trying to find a spot. He's actually hitting himself. And take a look here in the center of the field. You can see the French player on the left of the screens pushing out, and Gunny, as the Austrian, is kind of holding, because you can see the Swedish player has occupied the woodland, and the Austrian player of the opponent's team has pushed forward. And you can see his light infantry is opening up, or his rifles are opening up on Gunny's position at this point. He's in a very secure position in the woodland. The Gunny is going to come under duress by 6 rifle units. Now you can see here Steph's push out as the French, and wisely pulling his cav back so he doesn't take unnecessary losses. And you can see the French player and his push out on the bottom of the hill at the far left of the screen. Now you can see the Swedish player is making a massively aggressive push on Gunny's position here, and although Gunny was taking some great shots on the Austrian player's lights, routing them out. He did get hit pretty bad by the Swedish goons there, so the French cav countercharges and does push back only the cav in that instance, but Gunny's going to push up his lights again to get some more shots off. You can see the Grenzers here getting into action. Okay, so let's take another deeper look into what's going on. Okay, and this will be a little quicker. But you can see over at the, following the red highlight, you can see over on the left that they're holding in the woodland. And you can see in the center, they're making a strong push to the center and downhill. Now this shift is going to dictate the remaining part of the battlefield in a major way. Now, as far as the green highlights, you can see our new player at the far left is going to be making a push still into that woodland and losing the majority of his army on that push. Now, you can see over on the right hand of the screen that I'm still holding, but I'm going to start falling back into that woodland behind me. And you can see the American player on the far right with the red highlight is going to be pushing out against me as I fall back. Now this is a orchestrated move and one that is by design. Now, not everything that happens after this was necessarily design, but it was something that we had hoped for, and it just kind of goes way better than expected. So let's get back to it. Alright, so here we are with the movements we discussed. You can see, again, the Swedish player pushing more of his force down the hill to push against the left wing of Stefik and the right wing of Gunny. And you can see that they have really taken good control over this woodland, as we maybe discussed earlier. You can see now the American player making his push versus me, and you're going to see my fall back is by design. So as I make a volley, I'll roll each line. This is the process of the third line that's about to roll. So now that line is rolling, or militia rather. Now you're going to see here, this is where it starts going extremely well. Stefik sees this gap here. You can see the gap right there. Stefik is going to start pushing his line to exploit that gap. Okay, now this is where it's going to get in. You can see my line shifting over to help support his push. But the American player is going to see this exploiting of that gap, and he now realizes his right wing is exposed, and the Swedish player does also realize that his left wing is exposed. So this is going to force the Swedish player further back to reposition, and the American player has got to make a decision which should have been falling back. He is going to do what most players are going to do and push the attack. Now, he does split his force and tries to support going downhill while he pushes forward with the other portion of his army. Now, what I was doing here is I was taking shots with one line and then rolling it to help Steph with his push down on the bottom of the hill. And as I volley, I plan on keep rolling. Now you can see here, getting in a little skirmish here with them, and it doesn't really bode well for me. Again, his mass and alignment is not good for this type of fight, so I'm going to pull out of it. Do take some losses, but not that heavy, honestly. And I've got some units to kind of deter him, to keep him in position. Okay, now at the bottom of the hill, you can see that our new ally is almost completely dead. And also the Austrian player, who is all over the place, is almost dead as well. Now, let's take a deeper look into this. So you can see here, where things are going. Now, highlighted in red, you can see that their armies are split into two. The army on the hill and the army on the bottom of the screen is going to be starting to be forced back. Now, he does have these two cav units to try to hold us from taking that flank further, but it's not going to be enough. We have so much line there. And you're going to see here highlighted in yellow some of the troop movements that we're going to make. The green got kind of messy, so I went with yellow. Now, I'm going to roll over my lines on top of, over the top of Stefik's lines after he gets several volleys in. That way we can keep our distance from the American player on the top. So the whole deal with this tactic is to avoid the player on the top or to pull around, completely surround him, and take him out in piecemeal, keeping the other players away. So this is a straight out of Napoleon's tactics. And basically what you do is, if you have less superior army, what you're going to do is take their army in piecemeal. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're not going to fight the whole army in entirety. We're going to take it in piece. And when I roll over the top of Stefik with the yellow highlight with the arrows going down, I'm hoping Stefik's lines will flip around right where they are and position to face the American player as a diversion, and then he flips over the top of me. That's what the hopes are. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so you can see Stefik is heavy involved here, and he is up against a lot of superior lines. Now you can see the Swedish cav we have pushed back, and I have several lines now wrapping around into the woodland from the opponent's starting position, and I'm going to be occupying an avenue to the valley. Will be covered by my lines, and you can see here the American player at the top of the hill is starting to push down with half of his army, which the other half is still stuck on the hill, facing what he believes is the remnants of my army in front, but you can see I'm already pushing them downhill at this point. So we are at this point wrapping up the remnants of the Swedish player. You can see my lines have wrapped over the top of the French player. Some of them did rout a little quicker than anticipated, just going up against all those superior lines. Now, they are not going to be able to withstand holding up against all those volleys from my lines on top of all the beating they took from the French lines earlier. So you're going to see that he is wisely going to try to peel out of this, trying to save as much of his Swedish army as possible. Unfortunately, some of his army has to go through the top part of the valley, which I now occupy, and will be able to put nice little volleys into him as he goes down. So let's take a deeper look now at what has happened. So you can see here highlighted in yellow, my arrows are going to be pushing down on their opposing side of the hill to come around behind them. And you can see my right wing will be pushing down to hold a defensive position versus the American player. And I will be occupying that woodland that the Swedish player had previously held to push on Gunny's position. Now, the remnants of our French ally Stefik will push down as well to provide support. He did take a pretty good beating from that fight with the Swede, but the remnants of his army from that, which you can see in the middle of the screen in the woodland at the Valley of Death, will be pushing down to help Gunny with his push on the immediate, while the rest of my flanking force goes behind. And that will provide immediate help for Gunny as he pushes, because he's being reinforced further by the retreating Swede from the top. So let's pick it back up. Okay, so you can see that I'm using my lights to keep the American player back. So once he pushes into it, I'll volley and roll them back, but it's at least keeping him at bay. Now he is starting to bring the remainder of his forces that were at the hill down, which is a wise move. So we'll be dealing with all the American army pushing. You can see my flanking force has stretched, and I have to stretch the whole hill back just to make sure they don't break out, especially with the cav there. So you can see I am now folding back from the woodland and just keeping that chase going at the top, avoiding the fight, taking some fire shots and then rolling back. And the point here is to just keep avoiding him. And you can see my flanking force has completely surrounded them in, and now it is just a matter of when my guys get up. Of course, they're going to want to shoot and roll back, just like I'm doing to the American player. So that's something we already kind of understand, especially with Gunny. He's a very clever player, so his force coming from the top of the hill will be able to take flanking shots on a good portion of the French army as it tries to roll. It's going to be getting shot on the flank. Now we are weak on this back side, so I was afraid of a breakout there. So luckily Stefik's got a few units there, and also Gunny, but not as many to oppose them if they try to push all their units out. I don't need my flanking force anymore, so I'm going to roll it uphill, and my screening force is now going to roll to the back side to prevent them from coming out that back side, because they're in a complete push out, but it doesn't work. They are going to mass route at this point. So I think the cav is the only thing that pushes out, and maybe a few other Swedish units. So my what used to be my holding force is now going to be able to wipe them out. And now it's just one army left, and at this point he's versing two pretty good sizable armies and remnants from Stefik's army, and I think one unit of Swedish Swiss Guard from the French player. I think it was like 23 men or something is all he had left. But anyways, great strategy. As you can see it ending here, the American player does quit. We basically were able to frustrate him, taking him out of his element of his game. His strategy works best in 4v4 matches because he's a very compact player. He likes playing in compact spaces. That's where his army works best. So in the open field, left his army at a disadvantage, and that was the advantage that we were able to exploit. And also the gap in the flanks allowed us to do the old Napoleon tactic of taking on the army in peace with greater force. So you don't engage where you are equal, you engage where you are in greater superiority of men. And you do that by creating that superiority. So, hope you enjoyed this. If this is content you do enjoy, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and also ringing that bell, if you will, so that you can be informed of future content that we will be providing. I do provide multiplayer every Monday, and I do provide campaigns on Wednesdays, and I do also random things on Fridays, but I do sprinkle in other things throughout the week as time allows. So please definitely feel free to join us as we continue our journey on documenting these events. Thanks again, everyone. We will see you on the next video.